Welcome back to Plague Scythe Studios, ladies and gentlemen. Today's video and subsequent series of videos is going to be a doozy. I hate to hype up my own content, but I really think it is because you know when I start a video with my hair back, stuff's getting serious. So the premise of this video series started from what must have been a fever dream. I woke up in the middle of the night a while ago and had this realization that I had some spare parts lying around that I could use to fulfill kind of a faraway dream I've always had. So welcome, I guess, to a series I'm formally calling FRANKEN-BOX. Before we get into the premise, I feel like I should probably address all the other boxes sitting around me. Let's start with this one, shall we? So this is the Cube. This is my HT PC that sits over there near my TV. It's not doing a whole lot of good right now because I need to actually do an upgrade for it to be able to drive 4K. Got a GTX 970 in here right now. That will probably be sold off eventually because not a whole lot I'm going to be able to run at 4K other than some indie games, 2D side scrollers, that sort of thing. But today, this is not the star of our show. He will get the attention later, but we're going to be salvaging some stuff out of here and upgrading it later down the road. Primarily the mini ITX motherboard, not the heatsink, but the CPU under it, as well as the RAM. Everything else, graphics cards coming out probably, but everything else will be saved for later. So that's the first round of parts. Here you see a laptop because, well, I'm just taking the hard drive out, more accurately a SSD because I just can't justify having another computer of about that size, and it already has a Windows install. Pretty fresh because the other hard drive got corrupted, so we're going to be recycling that one. So let's get on to the actually interesting parts of this. Let's start with this one, actually. So this is the heatsink we're going to be using. It's a low-profile Fantex, and has a 120mm fan, flat, about 74 millimeters tall when mounted. And I had this initially in there, but it actually has some RAM clearance issues, which we're going to have to address in this video series. But I really like this cooler, that's why I hung on to it, and it's really a really nice height for what we need for this video series. That is. The next thing is, believe it or not, a power supply. PSU fits in this box, and I'm really curious to see it. This is a mini ITX that actually accepts a full desktop ATX power supply that you would find in something like the full tower below. You know, we're talking something about that big. This, on the other hand, is specifically a mini ITX power supply that gives you almost the bare minimum of cables. So we have a 20+4 pin, 12 volt P4 pin that is for the CPU, a couple SATAs, a couple Molexes, and one FDD, which is kind of an ancient standard nowadays, but for just direct case fan. And this thing's only going to put out about 300 watts, but we're not even going to need that. We'll really only need about 200 maximum. And the reason we're getting such a small power supply like this, a specialty one in the worlds of stuff like the SFX units, is because of the type of case we're using. Now you're probably looking around and wondering, well, what kind of case are we using? Hold off on that thought one more moment. Our last part is the Zotac GTX 1050 Ti Compact Edition. Now this thing is especially cool because the 750 Ti kind of revolutionized mini graphics cards when it came out. They were, slim, light, but also didn't have an external power connector, so you could literally just plug them into any PC. They can handle another 75 watts drawn through its PCI connection, and you're good to go. You can, make an office PC into a light gaming rig. This is kind of the same thing, except it's about twice as powerful as a 750 Ti, not quite, but pretty close, and about 75 to 80% as powerful as a GTX 970. And given its low profile, low footprint in a case, that is a good trade-off for me. And I figured since performance is what it is, this is actually one of the perfect times to do it. This runs about 160 bucks if you are in a really low space case. And one of the nice features of this is you can actually take off the wide bracket for the mounting point and put a slim bracket on it so it can fit into half-width cases, which is something we will definitely have to take advantage of for this. Now, why all of that? Why all of this specialized parts? And we could just buy any mini ITX case, throw all this in there. A lot of them just use SFX, we'd be good to go. So why all of this prepping and planning to make it as small as possible? This is your answer. This may look like a random piece of crap metal chassis of some sort, but believe it or not, it's that. This came off of a dead Xbox 360 that I've been hanging on to for what must be the better part of 10 years now. We had a lightning strike at my house, like I said, about 10 years ago, and it fried my entire entertainment system, and so I bought another arcade. So this came off of that, and I held on to it forever just in case, you know, the power supply, all the other parts still worked, but it did fry the 360. And before I moved here, I actually just going through my closet throwing crap out, and I found it, and I was like, you know what? I've never taken apart a 360. I've taken apart a lot of other dead consoles, so let's try it. And I did. Went through, you know, the useless PCB that, you know, no one can get any recycling money for nowadays, but had this very well constructed metal chassis under it. And I thought to myself, there it is. There's that build a PC and a console I've always wanted to do. Now, I don't have the plastic. I didn't want the plastic. But what I want to do with this thing is basically make it look like something that would come out of Soviet Russia in the 50s, right? I wanted to have this. I might paint it. I may not. We're going to have to see. This thing's going to need a lot of modification, though, obviously, because it's not meant for this sort of things. We're talking having to drill standoffs, which I do have motherboard standoffs, but this isn't flat. We're probably going to have to get a bunch of sheet metal or another PC case that we can chop up. We're going to have to cut a port for the motherboard I/O. We're going to have to make some type of custom enclosure for it with plenty more ventilation points because, you know, airflow is going to be a problem in something this small, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to cram it all in there. So yeah, this is FRANKEN-BOX, where we're going to try to put all this crap, make a decently powerful computer that is more powerful than, you know, 90% of laptops for very cheap. And I'll be sure to include the price at the end of this when we get there. A lot of this stuff, you know, I've had lying around, it would be sitting in a closet otherwise, so I don't consider it an expenditure. But even if you do this outright, I feel like time is going to be your biggest expense, and I'm finally at the point where I feel like I have the patience to actually do it. So FRANKEN-BOX. Let's get some of this stuff open and check it out before we go any further. I guess we're going to start with the unsung hero of this build, and I don't really have a table set up to unbox all this stuff up, so we're just going to do it on the corner of my desk here and hope for the best that the audio doesn't blow out or anything like that. So that's it. That is how big it is, and wow. That is pretty awesome. Now, I fully expect this thing to sound like a jet engine when it runs because of this small, I don't know, what is that, like 40 mil, 30 mil fan? I have no idea. Terrible with metric units. But this should do everything we need it to. And let's get the case up here, see how it fits. Okay, well, it appears I have way more room to play with than I initially expected, which is a great thing. We need about, I believe, 160, 170 millimeters across here for the motherboard. So let's tape that off and see how it's going to go. That's good stuff right there. We've got from end to end right at 190, which means we are comfortably at 170 there. And the holes I know are about 160 for the mounting point. So I think we've got plenty of wiggle room there. Worst case scenario, we could always turn it up because this isn't going to be the tallest part in the build. We're going to have to get creative on our enclosure, so that's really not a problem at all. I'm very happy with that. That gives us plenty of room here to tuck the cables in, hopefully not obstruct airflow too much. But this thing I'm taking a bit of a gamble on. It was only about 30 bucks anyway, so if it doesn't completely work, it's not the end of the world. I had like one review, and I've never heard of a Pevia, so, you know, it's one of those things that I'm hoping for the best here. I'll go ahead and show you the CPU cooler we're using. Like I said, I'd initially had this on the Cube because I'd planned to do something different with the motherboard when I upgraded it, but here we are. So, standard 120 millimeter Fantex fan. They make great fans, great everything actually. Really like their products. And this is the heatsink. So when it's on, it's going to be about that tall, and this thing provides really good performance for its footprint. And I think it's about a 95 watt capacity. It'll be going on a quad-core i7-3770S, which is before the thermal started being a real issue. It is an S model anyway, so it's not going to draw all that much. I think it's a pretty good pairing for the 1050 Ti. You know, it's older, so you know, I don't think it's going to be the bottleneck by any stretch of the imagination for the kind of games that I, you know, want this thing to run. So I think that'll work out fairly well with this cooler, assuming that RAM clearance isn't too much of a problem. Like I said, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Now this is kind of the star of the show, and really curious to see what it looks like. Let's figure out how to open the damn thing first off. Yes, tape. So I've never actually seen one of these in person, and I'm really excited to hold it up next to one of my full-size reference cards. And of course, the reference cards aren't even as big as some of the monstrosities they sell, like triple slots and extended length cards like the triple Strix from Asus and whatnot. So it ought to be pretty interesting. Is there something like, oh wow. So this is the lower slot I was referring to, and it actually has an external DVI, which is interesting. I wonder why this has to be dual slot. We'll see. Interesting though. Okay. I believe that's PCB I'm touching. Preferably not do that. Wow. Okay, it does have the DVI. A lot of these don't actually have anything on the top, so you can make it a single slot, but this is too thick, which is fine because this has a very adequate looking cooler for it. I cannot get over that. Look at that. That is marvelous right there. How small that is. Okay, well, that's how we disconnect it, because that's the RAM chips there. I'm going to get out a relic for you guys, so we can do a small comparison here. So I don't actually have a 750 Ti. A friend of the channel has a 750 Ti because I got it for him for his birthday. In this is what he had before, and used to be quite something. This is a GT 8800. I think it's the cheap version that came out like right after the $900 version. Yeah, their whole pricing and naming scheme was asinine back then. Cool, very slim cooler because these things barely pulled anything. 1 6-pin, but just for length comparison, I mean, look at that. That's insane. Of course, you got a really thick chunk of heatsink going on there, but just how much you're able to downsize the PCB for, you know, a card that's effectively, I don't know what, 5-6 times faster than this thing, and using less power. That's just insane what we've gone technologically. Of course, this uses a node that's probably 5 to 6 times bigger than that one, so, you know, kind of explains how they're able to get it so small. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how well this thing fits in our case here. Okay, so if we just let it rest, maybe. Don't feel comfortable doing that. Let's try that. And then we take that off. Yep, we're going to reach a height of about what I expected. So we're only going to have to get another couple inches tall, which is nice. This thing should be about the same height by the time it's installed as the cooler. Might actually be a little bit smaller than our CPU cooler, so either way, this isn't going to be the bottleneck for clearance. What a lot of other people do when they build in these asinine small cases is put a riser and mount it like that, so you have a 90 degree. I don't like that personally because of really just not having that much room to play with, and you know, this thing's an external fan. If it was a blower, it'd be one thing, so we're going to try that for now. So to save you guys some visual pain, I took out the 970 and skipped ahead because that thing could be kind of a pain with the front fan setup, and because this thing has a back plate, it can run to the heatsink. It'd be a bit of an issue, but I thought this would be a fun comparison. Oh yeah, AC was going that entire time, great. So that's the 970, and this, the 1050 Ti, a card that is literally half the height and 75% of the performance. So pretty cool if you ask me. And it's just nuts. Also, you know, $160-ish, $330-ish or more at launch. So 4 gigs of RAM, 3.5 gigs of RAM gate. Still waiting on those checks, NVIDIA. So yeah, pretty cool. And I'm sure there's going to be, you know, questions. Why didn't you just buy some type of mini ITX case you could use that on? What was the point of this build? Do you really need it? No, I don't. But I guess I will explain perhaps in more detail as we're taking apart the mini ITX cube over here. Now, what you guys probably aren't going to see too well until my right hand gets in is the strap, the electrostatic strap. I always have one of those on, especially because I'm standing on carpet, which is not ideal, but the only place that there's not carpet in this apartment is the kitchen, and I really don't want to build in there. So, yeah, be sure to do that. So we're going to start yanking stuff here, and wish me the best of luck. We don't hurt anything. Should be all right, though. So why am I doing this? If I didn't give a good enough explanation, it's a passion project, right? I mean, this really, if you were going to go out today and even if you had spares like I do, that thing's not going to come off. I remember this USB header being a problem. I wouldn't exactly recommend you doing what I'm doing for the sake of price and ease, especially if you're a novice or beginner PC builder. But this is one of those things I've always wanted to do. I remember back in 08 or 09 seeing the first time someone tearing apart. Of course, they've been doing it since they came out, but first time I'd seen it, someone taking apart a Xbox 360 and putting what was at the time a lot more powerful PC hardware. I just thought that was really cool. And a lot of these people will make the power supply work, they'll make the buttons work, everything. And I thought that was super cool. Okay, that was a bit more problematic than I'd anticipated. Got some pliers, got them off, so we're good to go there. But yeah, this isn't exactly something I would recommend everyone run out and do. It's just kind of a fun side project for me. Obviously, I have this computer, I have the desktop that's sitting under it. It's not exactly like I need something, and this is going to be the third most low performance PC that I own, and hopefully I can get rid of that laptop and it'll be the most low performance thing that I own. What I plan to do with this, besides just build it to see if I can and see what the final aesthetic product is run older stuff, things that 1050 Ti hardware has no problem, especially anything from around the time of Stalker or Fallout 3, older games like that, as well as esports titles that'll run just fine on it. This won't be used as much as it probably should be for what I'm doing, but I just want to see that it works, like I said. And I absolutely despise this motherboard I/O shield, so come on. I know I got that screw out, but this is always the most nerve-wracking part for me, is taking, now we're out, parts out of a PC. I don't mind putting them in, but taking them out is when stuff tends to snap or, short out. So let's pray to the gods that we're all good. So at this point, what I'm going to do is hook up everything except for the SSD, because I know it works. I know that Windows installation is fine, and I don't really foresee any issues with that compatibility causing any problems down the road. But I am going to make sure the 1050 Ti boots up and everything, and we get the power supply running well before we try anything else. During this part, I guess I'll address some of the other issues we're going to run into. So, as I had said before, this heatsink isn't going on. Obviously, it's too tall. We'll be using that back in the cube whenever we upgrade it. So we're going to use the Fantex, but it comes out just to right there. And I actually, when I ran it, I took out that stick of RAM and put in a single 8 gig that is now in the desktop. This is a 2x4 gig. However, if we take off these aesthetic heat sinks, and that's all they are, don't let anyone lie to you, they're 100% aesthetic. DDR memory has not needed heat dissipation since like DDR1. You're not going to get better performance out of it. So if we take those off, I know we'll be good clearance wise, so that's going to be a bit of a hurdle. They are black PCB underneath, which is nice, but just something we gotta look out for. So probably have to buy a heat gun or something to take it off, but that's something else I've never really ventured into. But I'm gonna try it just to say I did. So we're gonna run this thing down here and hope for the best. I'm not gonna actually, let's go ahead, because I'd rather do this and then the graphics card. So it looks like we've got just enough space for the way we'll be running this, and that's a good thing to me. Getting this out is probably going to be the bear. Don't want to torque the motherboard or anything too badly. Okay, 4-pin would be over here. We don't need anything else at the moment, which is nice. This we're going to have to move in case the graphics card is going there. There's no good way of doing this. Set it there. That'll work. Terribly ugly, but it'll work. It's also, let's see, what do we have there? Is it just the DVI holding that? I believe it is. So we just got a screw there, and say these DVI little nubs will come out as well. So let's go ahead and try that. Never used a 50 Ti card before, my own personal stuff, but for the value, they're some of the best cards on the market. If AMD had their 560 range cards in this mini, I'd have gone for that because of the performance per dollar. But well, you know, Nvidia has always been a leg up on them in power consumption, at least in the past, you know, well, since Fermi at least. Let's go back that far. And I definitely didn't want to have anything with an external power connector, so we're going to bite the Nvidia tax on this video and go with that. So I'd rather set it on cardboard, to tell you the truth. All right, as one connector off, and in all honesty, I could probably leave it off and be fine, but I like it just for a bit more support on the card, because it's going to be dangling there otherwise, and I'm not a fan. And there it is. Okay, about to say, couldn't find a screw. That would be my luck. So, at least we got that going for us. Can we line it up from here? Let's try threading it first. I like touching graphics cards as little as possible, so this isn't exactly the most stress-free environment at this moment. Mainly because there's just no real good way of handling it. It's not like touching it's the end of the world, but every little thing you put your fingerprints on, there's going to be oil from your skin transferred to electronics. But I'm interested to see how long this card will live up for. The 970 has aged gracefully, aside from its VRAM issue, which, you know, everyone just kind of come to expect at this point. Not that at 1080p I really ever run into that issue. Most of the time you're going to get things that are limited by the bandwidth of the card first, more than you're going to run into texture issues. It would be a bigger hit to frame rate than it is to the frame buffer. So I'm not really worried about the memory aspect of this at all. Okay, there's one down. There we go. Short back plate. Very, very tiny card. I like it a lot. Alright, let's put it in and hope it works, because I have no real power button, so I'm going to have to bridge the gap. And sometimes it can be a little finicky when you do that, so it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to make contact. It appears it is grand. It's not the end of the world. I don't like that though. So my 980 Ti had a gap there. I'm not sure what the difference is here. It appears to be the mounts for the heatsink are the only thing that's touching. So I'm gonna try it. Yeah, that's all it is. Goes in just like so. And get it better in frame here. All right, I'm going to plug it up and cross my fingers looking for the power button. So there it is. That is boot. I don't have spare HDMI. I just want to make sure the card was running. I can snag one real quick and hook it up with the monitor and make sure we are outputting signal. I can't even hear it though. That's pretty sweet. I'm really hoping that it stays that way. Also getting some airflow off the power supply, which doesn't appear to be really all that noisy anyhow either. So good start. So we are running, and there is BIOS screen. Something's a little bit more whiny. I believe it's that. Yep, not fully support boot device. Well, there is no boot device, so that would explain why. Not planning on running this configuration on ultra wide, but graphics card works and everything else is working. Yep, I believe it's that. It's giving us our whiny sound, so that's okay though. I did not expect this thing to be completely silent considering the Xbox 360 noise, so yeah, cool. I got quite the mess to clean up right now, but I guess that'll do it for part 1 of FRANKEN-BOX. The parts work. I know that heatsink works. Just gotta get everything in line. We'll be back next time when I have some more planning done for the case. That'll probably be a lot of the next couple episodes, is just modifying that thing, and then we'll get into installation and all the other fun stuff later down the road. Thanks for watching. Bye.